So welcome to you all to Provoke 15, and I know some of you haven't been before and some of you have been before, but this is about connection, it's about relationships, it's about sharing knowledge, information, whatever it might be, but ultimately it's about being provoked. It's about having somebody talk to us about an issue that they're passionate about and enabling us to do some different thinking, some different connecting, whatever it might be. And I think there's a strong chance that almost everybody on the screen will have heard of Professor Donna Hall and her amazing work in Wigan when you work with community and your local, well, the local authority that you were the chief of, creating the Wigan Deal, which has been extraordinary and groundbreaking in all sorts of ways. But you haven't sort of been twiddling your thumbs either, have you, Donna? Because you've moved on from Wigan and now you're the chair of New Local, which again is an amazing organisation, an independent think tank and network with a tiny little mission of transforming public services and empowering communities and to sort of reach full potential. So extraordinary stuff. And then you fit in being the chair of Bolton Foundation Trust. So quite a lot going on for you, I think. And so we're delighted you're here and giving us your time. So thank you.
So a little bit more about me. Les has already explained what I do, but I was adopted as a child, and I think it was that kind of motivated me to think about how important public services are, and how much they influence people's lives and life chances. So you know, I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for really good social care and really great public services and community. So I didn't kind of set out to be a chief exec. It's weird, isn't it? You end up doing these jobs without really having a plan. But anyway, I've just ended up here by accident. But I've always been driven, quite, passionate about the best possible services we can provide across the NHS, local government, community and voluntary sector, housing and everything, and the police. And it's always frustrated me how disjointed public services are when it comes to relating to a person, and how we kind of process people through a pipeline of need, and not even connected need, but need that comes through the lens of our own organisation. So if you're a homeless person, you'll be assessed for a house, rather than, somebody thinking, are there other issues going on in this person's life? Is it around maybe debt, bereavement, mental health? And we just seem to kind of treat people as a unit of need, rather than as a person, as a human being. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Wigan, and people are really interested in Wigan. And if you get a chance, obviously I've left now, but if you get a chance to go when all the restrictions are lifted, then please go, because there's nothing quite like going to a place to find out really what's happened there and what it means to the citizens, not just to the people in jobs like mine, but people on the ground in the community and the community and voluntary sector that we funded through the deal. So a little bit of a background as to how it started. 11 years ago, we did a piece of work. I just started, and we brought in a woman called Hilary Cottam. I don't know if people have heard of Hilary. If you are interested in this kind of thing, I would really recommend, if you haven't already read it, reading her book, Radical Help, which really sets out a vision for a new way of working differently, more relationally with citizens. And Hilary did a series of projects, and she was funded to do them, about £1 million per project. And we were lucky enough to get her to come to Wigan. And her project in Wigan was working with 25 families, all living in social housing in one of our most deprived parts of the borough. And the children were on the edge of being taken into care. So we were working intensively with the families through the lens of children's social care. So we said to her, just get a group of people together from across public services and find out what we're doing wrong, why we're not helping these families to live their best life. And it was quite shocking what she unravelled, really. We basically mapped out every single interaction that we'd had with families over a long time period, maybe 10, 20 years, and which agency was involved, whether it was the police, criminal justice, the NHS, housing, council, social care. And we quantified it, and it worked out as between £250,000 and £500,000 per family per year. And at the end of that year, most families were in either exactly the same position as they were at the beginning, or they were worse. The situation had declined. So we knew that we had to change the way that we worked with people. And we were spending around 80% of the public service time that we were working with the families on assessing them, repeatedly assessing them, stopping them accessing services because they weren't bad enough to access those services. So basically we were telling people, go away, get poorer, get iller, get more in debt, allow your mental health to deteriorate so that we can then help you. So, that is not a model for sustainable public services. At the same time, we did something with older people and people with learning disabilities in another part of the town, again, another quite deprived part of the town. And we found we were the most expensive adult social care provider in the northwest of England, and also the poorest quality. So we were spending a lot, but we had poor outcomes. So this is right at the start of austerity. And again, we were doing the same thing. We were prescribing something that we thought was the best thing because it was the most expensive thing. So we were sitting somebody in a day centre all day, picking them up in a council minibus. That package of care costs around £4,000, £5,000 a week. But they weren't happy, they weren't enjoying their lives, and we knew we had to change. Both ends of the kind of life course needed to change radically. So we created something called the Wigan Deal. We had to make £160 million worth of savings as well. So we were number 3 on the list of the most cut councils in the whole country. So we knew that it wasn't just a matter of just chopping and slicing little bits off services, closing libraries and things like that. We had to redefine our role within the place, really radically redefine it. And we did. So it didn't just happen overnight. We did it bit by bit. And, we challenged ourselves to think differently about how we delivered services, how we related to people. We used the learning from Hillary and the learning from the work with Nesta and with adult social care clients. And we just radically transformed everything that we did. So we closed down things that didn't work. So we closed many of our day centres, most of our day centres, and reinvested money into the local community. So we put 13 million into community and voluntary sector projects, which were not commissioned top down, us saying, we want this, tell us how we can do it. Basically, we said, what needs to happen in your neighbourhood that will improve lives? So whether it was giving a community centre to the community, or with support and money and a budget, or a library. So we asset transferred libraries, community, not all of them, but the ones where there was a demand to do it from the local community. Libraries, community centres, bowling greens, even a farm. So we transferred a community farm over to a brilliant group of people who wanted to work with people with learning disabilities and people with mental health issues. And it's an absolutely fantastic facility. We were making a loss in swimming pools, but when we handed it over to the community, they started to make a profit and they paid themselves, good wages. It wasn't just a kind of big society type concept. It was a genuine shift in power to local people. Most importantly, I think, of everything that we did was a huge organisational development piece called the Be Wigan Experience, which was about our attitude and our behaviours. And we employed an anthropologist. He's absolutely brilliant. I can really recommend him. He'd be a good speaker, actually, for one of these sessions. He's called Dr. Robin Farrow, freelance anthropologist. And he basically kind of re-educated everybody to start to deeply listen and to be an ethnographer and to understand the reality of people's lives. So not just to assume that you know what somebody wants or what somebody needs, but actually to really deeply listen and walk alongside them. And really start to build a different relationship with people, kind of have a relationship that's human to human, not human to unit of public service need. We set up 7 integrated multidisciplinary teams, work with across all public services, working around the family. We had a team around the family, we had a team around the school, and a team around the GP practice. We also were quite strong on who we wanted to be part of this team in the council. So we had around 5,500 staff. there were some people who just didn't like this way of working. They liked the protection of having a clipboard separating them from the resident, and they were suspicious about this different way of working. So we tried to help them and support them and give them all the development that they might need. But in the end, ultimately, if they were quite cynical rather than being skeptical, nothing wrong with being skeptical, but if they were cynical and kind of critical of this approach, which only a few were, but we just said, look, sorry, we're going to have to part company with you. We'll help you leave with dignity. But we were quite firm on that we wanted people with the right kind of attitude and behaviours, because we're blessed to be serving the public. That was the kind of view that we took, and we are a guest in their lives. So this is an opportunity for you to really shine and show how you can work differently relationally, build that relationship, build that kind of partnership, and stick with it. So again, if you're really interested in finding out a bit more about this, there's a fantastic write-up of it by the King's Fund. So the King's Fund came and lived with us for quite a while, about 6 months, and actually spoke to local people. They spoke to partners and tried to get beneath the skin of what made it a success. And the two things that they said that made it a success was, firstly, simplicity, clarity of purpose of what our role was as an organisation, working differently with residents. And then secondly, constancy of purpose. So it wasn't a project or a flash in the pan or a pot of money that we'd got from somewhere that we suddenly descended on an area and tried to do things to people and then exited when the money ran out. It was a long-term relationship. It was a partnership that went on and is still going on. It wasn't about me as a kind of heroic leader or the politicians. It was about the people in the place, and it had humility at the core of it, but a kind of bold humility that we knew that what we were doing wasn't working and we had to completely and fundamentally change it. So that's my kind of provocation to you today, Leslie. Public services, in my view, are broken in the way that they're currently structured and the way that they operate and the way that they treat people and process them through a sausage machine. So my kind of provocation to you is, what do we need to do to transform public services and to unleash community power?